So the name of the article is "Why Leadership Development Programs Fail" by Pierre Gargan, Thomas Helpenstein, and Kevin Lane.
Okay.
So one of the first topics was decoupling reflection from real work. So it's interesting. I work in the public education sector, and so it reminds me of how they struggle with sending teachers to get their masters or professional certificates off-site rather than having them develop with their principals and working with their teachers. So they're talking about companies, how they send their leadership team off-site to get training and certificate development, but when they come back, they only use 10% of what they learn. When they try to have leadership development trainings workshops on site, the problem is you have high demands projects already on site, and now you're trying to work on a homework assignment. And then they gave two examples. One example, the doctor was trying to figure out a medical device. When he presented to the board, they said no because they already had a team doing the same thing. And then another one, whereas they had the on-site leadership development, they figure out people's skills and develop their skills within them. They had more success because they were able to break them into teams and they worked on real life projects. So that's what they got from decoupling reflection from real work. It's really off-site versus on-site, right? And then how much are they using the skills from off-site on-site? That's one thing I took away. And the second thing is what happens when you have demanding projects, but you also have these projects to develop your leadership. How do you balance between the two so that you can practice your leadership skills that you newly acquire into your real life work? So I don't know if you guys have the same experience in your own sectors where you have people going off-site and bring it back to on-site, or have on-site trainings.
So I work in higher education, and folks are given a certain percentage of professional development funds to kind of go into the various conferences and kind of bring back what you've learned or what you're trying to implement. And I think one of the things is that we come back and so much money is invested in the individual, but is there really time set aside to really do and really learn what you've acquired, right, at the end of the day? So it's great that I think there's this lip service of professional development, but I think if we are really bringing it to the larger organization, we don't do nothing with it because we don't have the time. So we're either taking out fires, or we're implementing new programs, or there's a new initiative that needs to take place. But what in between those projects is the professional development taking place? What is the time that I've spent 5 days away learning something new or benchmarking a program? How do I implement that, but I don't have the time because I'm working on 5 other things? And so I don't think we really take the time to really just pause.
Right.
On some of the things that we're working on to really say, hey, let's take a moment, let's breathe, let's see what makes sense, and let's actually implement that. So there isn't that time for reflection because we're on a go, now.
Right.
And to some folks, I think taking time or taking pause ends up being like wasted time.
Right. And I want to follow Amazon now because you see the article on Amazon, how they're investing, I forgot how much $1 million in their workers to improve their skills. It will be interesting to follow them to see what happens. Do they actually are going to utilize it?
Yeah, and so when I first saw the title, I immediately went to kind of why I find it beneficial to go off-site, because when we do programs on-site, we end up trying to tie it too much to our real work, and it becomes more task-oriented. And I think that kind of becomes an issue when, instead of taking an honest reflection, a lot of times when we bring it back to our company or organization and institution, a lot of it is, okay, well, how can we use what you learned immediately in a task to create this value, instead of having that moment of reflection that you mentioned and saying, okay, well, how do we tie it to our overall work theoretically, and then start to bring it back into, instead of saying, how does this work towards this task, saying, how does this work towards our mission or our goals, and how can we kind of meet that? I think that's where I see that going, is trying to pull it back from task-oriented, kind of that theory of being a process rather than a task. Those 5, what are the 5 things we need to know? People want that task, but it's more of a process, an ongoing kind of cycle.
You should write that down. That's a good one.
Yeah, tell me about that. Well, in fact, this process. let's say, say I'm a study abroad, and I want to train a new staff member on how to implement parts of the field work. So some of it might be finding out, well, what do they already know? Let's say basic.
So move on to
Yeah.
so underestimating mindsets, and so that kind of goes back to that task-oriented, or more about the process than anything, which is when you look at what are the skill sets that you're trying to gain instead of how can we change our mindsets. And so when that comes up, it causes a lot of, I guess, panic for those who feel the need for control. And so when you are looking at a task, it's easy to say, all right, we're going to make a tweak here, we're going to make a change here, but to really admit, okay, me as a person, I need to change this piece about me, or this thing that has been seen as beneficial may not be beneficial now. And so going into that changing of your mindset is more being vulnerable, and especially the higher up you go, where there's more accountability for your work and the company or institution. It can be difficult to say, I'm going to take a chance on this and change the mindset that has worked so well for me this far along.
So does it talk about like if people are underestimating mindsets, so therefore they're not taking risks or having conversations? I get look at the article. I don't know if they're saying anything about that.
Leadership is Skype call after a certain
Like at the end, what was the evaluation? Like what was the completion?
So I'm looking at like paragraph 2. So right, so identifying some of the deepest below the surface thoughts, feelings, assumptions, and beliefs is usually a precondition of behavioral change. So I think we. Go ahead.
I was going to say, so I think what it gets at is kind of what we were talking about, where a lot of times we have these superficial conversations and we say, oh yeah, we're polite, and we say like, oh, I really like how outspoken you are about, this, and I think you do a great job. I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, and everyone here is a leader, all that. And then it takes a little bit of time, but after a while, you kind of say, that was great that you were so outspoken, but every time you did that, I felt like I'm not that type of person. And so it felt to me like you were kind of taking charge and really belittling me in that moment. And I think that mindset, if you don't get to those mindsets and those in authority allowing the people who may be in a hierarchical level below them acknowledge that and allow you to change your mindset on, okay, well, this has been successful for me, is just talking every single time an opportunity came, I speak, I do this, and that's why I'm a leader. Saying, well, actually, that's not. This is how it makes me feel, so that's why I don't see you as the leader. And so I think that's really the mindset that they're talking about.
So can we? So if we're looking at, if we're trying to jot this down and all these thoughts, so is it not being intentional about what people are bringing to the table, and so that's why? So to some degree, this is why this is happening.
Yeah.
Are we looking at, if we're connecting it from are we looking at like senior leadership kind of already going in with this focus and this thought, and then those who are reporting up are disregarded? Is that, are we also thinking that as well, or?
Yeah, I think so. I think that to a point. I think the being less task focused in here and thinking more about how am I perceiving these? How am I thinking about it?
Okay.
We could easily say that a leader is someone who reads a lot of leadership books, but it's really about how are they taking in that information and how are they putting it into context. Because I think it's easy for someone to say, value your lower employees more, but if the person doesn't, I could say, I'm going to set 5 minutes for the staff who reports to me to tell me their ideas, but if I'm not actually valuing their ideas, I'm not really taking them in, I'm just listening to them and disregarding them
Right.
immediately.
Okay.
So I'd say
let's yes, I was gonna say let's write that down.
less task and I guess I don't want to say mindset change because that's just redundant.
I said more shifting, right? You're not really changing, you're shifting, like 'cause
Shifting,
you're-
yeah.
Because it sounds like whatever I
Shifting
value, I'm going to
perception.
shift to your value. Or, and I think the other bullet is meeting where people are. You want to meet where people are. You don't want to change them. You just want to meet them where they are.
Right.
So you can find a solution together. If you don't meet them where you are, there becomes that control power
Yeah.
balance.
Well, I also think it kind of goes into the conversation we had about networking and all of that, where you have a change in mindset where you're not really changing yourself, but you're looking at, for me, when I have trouble talking to people because I'll say, I want to get value out of something, but sometimes I feel like I'm not going to bring value to that person, so I won't talk to them. And so changing that mindset of, I don't even know that person, and I may be able to bring value to this. So let's go and take a chance. And that's why I really like group work, because it's someone else saying you all have value together, and you're gonna find it at some point. It may not be the start. And to be honest, if we were just put in a room together, I probably wouldn't talk to you. But then if someone says you've got to be in a group together,
Right.
and now we'll be at lunch, and I'll say, okay, well, we've had a shared experience, so now I know that I can provide value to this conversation. I'm going to go join the conversation. So I think that's
The other point, because you brought it up in the beginning, is to provide meaningful feedback, right? Because if I just say, "Oh, thanks, that was great," but it really wasn't. I'm
Right.
just saying it so we can move forward with our next.
With the next
topic.
task, right? And then it goes back to being so task oriented, right?
yeah.
But I think it's also, again, going back to having these intentional conversation, right? And it's
Yeah.
not just I'm checking the boxes.
Yes. Yeah.
Just to check the boxes, but I'm being intentional about who you are when I'm trying to bring out